to do. Come to your calls on Just Stop Oil in just a moment. But first, let's hear directly from them. Zoe Cohen is a Just Stop Oil spokesperson and joins us live now. Zoe, very good morning to you. What was the point of disrupting the Premiership rugby final at Twickenham yesterday? What did that achieve? Good morning.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for having me on. Well, obviously, it got me on your show, didn't it? And it got the conversation back out into the mainstream, which has to happen every single day. You know, the supporters of Just Stop Oil, including Patrick, who's a working GP, and Sam, who's a construction worker, you know, understand what's at stake. You get it, don't you? I could hear in the conversation before this when that caller was talking, you understand what's at stake.
I understand what's at stake. I don't understand how your tactics make the situation any better.
Well, it's implied in what you described. All mainstream political parties, apart from the Conservatives, now do support Just Stop Oil's demand of an end to new fossil fuel licences. You said that yourself just before. And the caller that you had on, I think you said she was a columnist from the Daily Mail. I mean, lol, right?
What do you mean, lol? It's one of Britain's best-selling newspapers. You might not like it, but what's that funny?
Yeah. Because it's been shown in independent research by Carbon Brief that Daily Mail is one of the platforms that pushes out climate misinformation on a regular basis. So they have an agenda and they're pushing their agenda. The fact is, an end to new fossil fuel licences is a basic first step. You said it yourself, it's very reasonable. It is transformational, but that's what we need. It's demanded by, or it's been asked by for the International Energy Agency since 2021. You know, the World Energy Agency said no new fossil fuels are possible if we're going to avoid catastrophic climate damage, and that was 2021. Right, we're 2 years on already. We're out of time. We're out of time. Even the Pope. I mean, that lady said we should have. You know, you were talking about. Who agrees with the demand, Keir Starmer, and she was rubbishing that. Well, she would, wouldn't she? It doesn't really matter. It's not about politics. But even the Pope says enough fossil fuels. So we have to move on. But what we can really see is this disruption is not really being caused by Just Stop Oil, is it? It's really being caused by the oil companies and their endless lies. It's being caused by...
No, the disruption is being caused by your group. Let's be clear.
The reason for that, Ben, let's be clear, the reason that the ordinary people like Sam and GPs like Patrick are doing what they're doing is because these conversations are not happening and the changes are not happening anywhere near fast
Zoe,
enough.
They would be happening more if we weren't spending countless hours debating your tactics rather than the significance of the message that you are putting forward.
Well, but that's your choice, Ben. It's
a direct result of the tactics that you use.
Choose to have a different conversation, Ben. You're a really bright guy.
We'll choose to use different tactics, and we would.
But you have a choice. You know the reality. So what I want to do here this morning is to make a request of you, Ben. Let me make a request of you.
Well, in a moment, I want to just put one point to you first. If you accept that you use these tactics because they get you attention, you can't then criticise people like me for giving the attention that you want, because that's what your tactics are designed to do. They are designed to draw focus onto your group and your tactics rather than the cause that you are arguing for. That's the impact of it.
And we're stuck in a loop with news editors, media owners, etc., who don't cover the most important issue of our time unless we do this stuff. It's like an arms race. You're actually driving us to do this stuff. If you had the conversations that were needed, we wouldn't have to do it.
So the front page of the Sunday Times is a story about new oil and gas licenses, not to do with you.
Well, it
nothing
is actually.
To do with you. It's a separate story because the media does cover this.
No, it is to do with this because Just Stop Oil have been making this demand since February 2022, and the campaign has had results. Civil disobedience, civil resistance gets results. That's why we do it. It's been proven through history.
So if you hadn't been disrupting the roads and sporting events and the Chelsea Flower Show, you don't think Keir Starmer would have come out with that policy today? Really?
It's both the Liberal Democrats, Labour and the Scottish Parliament have all come out in support of an end to new fossil fuel licences since the beginning of the Just Stop Oil campaign. And independent polling shows that a majority of UK citizens do support the demand. Whether or not they support the methods, they support the demand. People are scared and they want action, and we need to move on to different conversations. So, which is why, as a compassionate, intelligent person, I would love to ask you to help this situation by having a long-form interview with a climate scientist Someone like Professor Bill Maguire, he's Emeritus Professor at UCL. He's a very learned gentleman. Someone like him on your show, having an intelligent, long-form dialogue with you so that you can help your LBC listeners understand why we do what we do and get beyond the conversations about tactics. Please,
our listeners understand the problem. They understand that climate change is real. They just don't agree with your tactics. But we've been around, we've been around the houses quite a lot on that. Can we just be clear on something? You're asking for a halt to all new oil and gas exploration licenses. That's correct. That's the main demand.
It is the demand of this.
That's the one. If that happened, if the government granted that, would you stop the disruption?
Absolutely. As soon as the government make a meaningful statement that they're going to do this, people will get off the rugby pitches, off the roads. That's the point.
Reason I asked that, Zoe, is because you described that policy as a first step. So what I'm putting to you is, if that happened, the government says, OK, actually, we agree, there's going to be no new licences, you'll say, great, we've got the first step, now we're going to continue disrupting people until you do X, Y and Z as well.
Well, I'm talking as a spokesperson for Just Stop Oil here, aren't I? The Just Stop Oil campaign is about an end to new fossil fuel licences, and the Just Stop Oil campaign and supporters of Just Stop Oil would end the disruption as soon as the government agreed meaningfully to actually take this action. So may I ask you again, please would you have someone like Professor Bill Maguire on your show to help yourself and your listeners really understand more deeply the desperate situation that we're in? I don't just mean agreeing that climate change is real. I mean desperately understanding
I understand
the
that. I was at COP26. We've talked a lot on my Sunday show about climate change. We've talked a lot about how important it is to young people and young voters. I think it's slightly patronising to suggest that actually people aren't aware of that. You might be right.
I'm not patronising you in any way, Bill.
But it's not me. I think people are aware of the problem we're in. The row, as we've talked about, is about your tactics. But
I'd like to add a bit more on that, please.
Just briefly, if you would, because I want to hear from our callers.
I have spoken with literally thousands of ordinary people. I have been doing climate talks for 5 years now. I've literally talked to many, many ordinary people, not activists, mums, dads, grandmas, grandpas, students, etc. And I can tell you from those thousands of conversations that many people understand now that there are really bad things happening, but still do not understand the basics of some of the extreme risks that we're under. For example, the fact that in the lifetime of children alive today, we're heading for 2 billion people at least living in areas outside survivable temperatures and climate. This stuff is not talked about routinely. It barely makes the headlines. In fact, it doesn't make the headlines. This is the stuff that needs to be got out there and people need to understand. If this was the case, if it was taken seriously in the real way it should be, Ben, I honestly believe there wouldn't be hundreds of people in Just Stop Oil. There would be tens of thousands.
Zoe, I've got to leave it there.
JustStopOil.org.
I think a lot of people agree with what you are trying to do. I think a lot of people understand the importance of it. I think the reason that people don't join in their thousands is because they don't like your tactics and they question whether they help achieve what you were trying to achieve. But we agreed to disagree on that one. Zoe, thank you for your time this morning. That was Zoe Cohen, Just Stop Oil spokesperson. I say that as someone who agrees with what they are campaigning for. I think what they are campaigning for is right. I think it is actually, in some ways, very realistic. It's not asking a great deal. No new oil and gas licences is not a great deal to ask for. I'm not convinced that their tactics necessarily help bring that about. But how should we respond to them? You heard there, you might not take her at her word, but you heard there Zoe giving a clear assurance that if they get what they want, no new oil and gas licences, and other countries have already done that, they will stop the disruption. Is that what now needs to happen? Or do you agree with Amanda Platel that that's all a load of nonsense, that they can't be holding people in the government to ransom like this, and it's time for the police to get tough? Amanda wanted tear gas to be used on these protesters. Where are you on this one? Well, Tony is in Bradford. Tony, good morning. Your thoughts?
Good morning. Great show, Ben, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Right, first of all, look, I mean, blood's boiling with these people. OK, I accept we've got climate change, but climate crisis is a completely different thing. Yeah, we've got climate change, but it's not a crisis. We'll be fine. You know, you have to adapt to these things. And all these radicals, these, people, obviously they've been radicalised, with this thing in the head that, we're all doomed, we're all going to die this time next year. Well, it's all a load of rubbish.
That is rubbish, Tony, but that's not what they say, of course. They say actually in the coming years there will be the big parts of the world that will be uninhabitable. That will lead to a refugee crisis that puts massive pressure on all of us. Parts of London will be underwater potentially.
Well, they say this, it's It's like what a film coming out saying, "Oh yeah, it's all going to happen." We don't know that. They're saying
it's based on scientific prediction. You're right. We can't be certain, but it's based on pretty good scientific forecasts.
Well, isn't it? Let's say the other side. We contribute less than 1% of pollution in this country more than any others. Yeah. So let's say they dragged England back to the Stone Age. Climate change will carry on, but climate crisis will not carry on. I don't think we were
having oil exploration in the Stone Age, Tony. They're not wanting to drag us back. They're just not wanting new oil and gas licenses to be issued.
Go forward. Okay, what's the alternative?
Green energy.
Yeah, so does that work? Is that working, green energy? We got these windmills and solar panels.
All the political parties agree on the need to invest more in green energy. The government is looking again at its ban on onshore wind farms.
They're following the money. Who's pushing it? The green agenda's pushing it because they're putting their technologies towards.
You don't think anyone's pushing the fossil fuel industry? Don't the oil companies do any lobbying?
Well, it's
never been they're influential, Tony?
Yeah, but Ben, it has to be done naturally. It's going to take time.
What do you mean done naturally?
Well, pollution...
We have to wait for the oil to run out.
In the 70s, go back to the 70s and 80s, it was really bad. Car pollution was really bad in London, in Bradford, everywhere in England. And they've gone forward now, and it's the carbon emissions have gone down 80%. Let's carry on. We'll bring out the new revolution with electric, but in time... Yeah, I mean, it's just like these protesters. Let's do what Germany does. Yeah, stop them straight away, arrest them, put them in prison. That's what they need to do. Tougher sentences.
So you agree with Amanda that we need to get tougher on them, Tony? Thank you for your call. Let's go to Fiona in Kendal. Fiona.
Well, all I can say is, look what we're up against. That kind of... I'm really sorry, with respect, Tony, but Tony is totally ill-informed. And I'm really going to say this with regret, Ben, because I can hear your reasonable approach to this. But that is partly the responsibility of people like yourself, that people like Tony don't get it. He absolutely doesn't get it.
What doesn't
we're running
he get?
out. He doesn't get that we're facing crop failure now. We've got parts of the world where farmers have given up on their farming. The weather patterns are so extreme in all parts of the world that things are failing. And we had food shortages in this country just before Christmas, and it was a bit of salad. And we could cope with that because we were ready for Christmas pudding, weren't we? But we're facing serious collapse of all our life systems. We've got water wars breaking out. We've got nothing going to plan. I mean, we are creatures that need to eat, we need to breathe, and we need to drink water, and all those systems are on the
So what should happen with Just Stop Oil? You clearly agree with what they're asking for. Do you agree with their tactics?
I agree that when human beings are in a dire situation, they have to take matters into their hands when their leaders are failing them, and our leaders are failing us. They are paying. What Tony needs to know right now, as you said, follow the money. As he said, follow the money. 236 million quid a week is going to the fossil fuel companies. They're awash with money, and they are bringing about the death of all the life systems on this planet. And we're paying them under this government to do that.
And you think that the tactics of Just Stop Oil are justified in that context? Fiona, just down the line, if you would, for me, please. That's Fiona and Kendall. Let's bring in Delroy and Brixton. Delroy, you've got a slightly different approach there. Good morning.
Absolutely, I do. I'm sorry to say that the lady is completely wrong. I agree with the gentleman who was on prior to it. We have legislation in place already in this country, anti-terrorist legislation. We need to get these people arrested, get them off the King's Highway, allow people to go about their lawful business since Magna Carta, and get these zealots out the way. There is a process. It's called Right to Your MP. There is a process. It's called going to Parliament. If everyone had their own little bugbear of an idea, then we would all be out the streets saying, we got to have pink sausages on a Thursday. We're not going to... It's pathetic. It's great. Little kids, you need to grow up hair, get into the right letters. That's what it's all about, right letters, and get the police out there, anti-terrorist legislation, Ben, and get them out the way. It's ridiculous. We've had enough of this. The people have had enough. We, the people, want them off the streets.
Fiona.
Good grief. When is the science going to be clearly explained to people so that those sort of ill-informed opinions are not coming back? At someone like me, who, I'm sorry, with respect, I've read the IPCC report. I've read what the international agency has to say. I live in a part of the world where I can see the effect of the climate crisis on our land. It's dry in May in the Lake District. The soil is cracking fucking open. Talk to gardeners. Talk to farmers. Listen to the scientists. This is not made up and fabricated.
But Delroy wasn't saying it was. He was talking about the tactics of Just Stop Oil.
No, he wasn't. He was saying this can be done by letters. We've done letters. We've done petitions. We've done marches even. People involved in Just Stop Oil have tried everything. And now these are the actions of people who are frightened for their lives and for their children's future. And this is, if you go back to January of this year, there was a cross-party committee chaired by Chris Skidmore, a Tory MP, and they said this should be put on a war footing.
Delroy, this should be put on a war footing. That's the scale of the problem, according to Fiona.
They would say that, wouldn't they? The fact is, these people are causing an obstruction. That is, as far as I'm aware, that's not civil, that's a criminal. They need to get out of the way, move out of people's way. There is a thing called due process. It's called the rule of law. If we start moving away from the rule of law, we've got anarchy, Ben.
What about previous protests? I'm talking about the suffragettes and the civil rights movement, where there was disruption, there was law breaking. We look back on it, Delroy, and say it was justified because of the importance of the cause.
No, but you're conflating two different things there. That was for looking for franchise. They were agitating to get the vote. This is the thing. They wanted the vote
and Just Stop Oil are agitating to help protect the planet. The cause is valid, isn't it, Delroy?
No, totally. Don't you see?
So you don't agree with? It's not just taxi. You don't agree with what they're trying to achieve. You don't agree with the cause.
If they were going about it the right way, then they'd get a hearing. They'd get a due hearing, and people could then, the jury of common sense and the court of public opinion would listen to them. But they're acting like spoiled brats, write letters, grow up hair, grow up.
Would you have made the same argument when the suffragettes were campaigning for the women to have the vote?
Not comparing with totally different thing, Ben.
Why are they different, Delroy?
Because they were, well, it's obvious, isn't it? They were trying to campaign for the women got franchised.
Yes.
This isn't about franchise. This is about getting a say.
So you think the cause the suffragettes were campaigning for was more valid and more legitimate than the cause Just Stop Oil?
They plucked Emmeline Pankhurst, and is that the only example they can think of? This is direct action, Ben, and it's going outside of law. It can't be agreed with. It can't be condoned.
But you seem to not have a problem with direct action when it's a cause that you find more valid, Delroy.
No, not at all.
So you do think the suffragettes were wrong?
Well, they should have written, if they wanted to throw themselves in front of horses at the race courses, that's up to them, but it was certainly
But
never
you think
the
they were
law.
wrong to do so, in the same way you think Just Stop Oil were wrong?
No, I don't. I think they were completely wrong in the fact that they got what they wanted is by the by, as far as I'm concerned.
But is it? Doesn't that show that actually these tactics work?
No, well, it may well do, but I just think if you do that, then every Tom, Dick and Harry will be starting to block the roads for their cause, and then you'll just start a whole new sort of series of different things. It's a slippery slope, man.
So we've got to draw the line out. Fine. Delroy, I respect your view. Delroy in Brixton, Fiona and Kendall, thank you very much for your calls. This text says, Just Stop Oil will be seen as heroes. We should all be with them now because talking does not work. Direct action with disruption and confrontation is the only thing that works. It's all about them. The government will not change without them. And Alf in Halifax says, climate change has been kicked down the road for the last 50 plus years, to my knowledge. Now people who haven't caught up are saying delay, delay, delay. And Stephen Chudley says, the government are granting licence because we need them. If we didn't, then there would be no need for them, and Just Stop Oil wouldn't stop what they are doing. If they got what they wanted, they would just ask for the next thing in their list. It wouldn't stop if we gave in. Well, that's not what they're saying, and you can say, well, I don't believe them, and that's fine. But also, when Keir Starmer and other main political parties, and indeed other countries, are saying, actually, do you know what? We can afford to stop new oil and gas licences being granted. In the case of some other countries, we're doing it. Is it really unrealistic to say that our government could follow suit? Is it really that much that this group, and I've said to you before, I don't agree with their tactics, but I do agree with what they're asking for. Is it really too much to say that could be achieved? 0345 6060 973. Lots more calls to come in just a moment. 8:45, Ben Kentish on LBC. News headlines, Neil Adami.